Welcome to our Devil. Today we are taking a look at entitled parents. Our first story is from none. You disowned me, so? That's no reason for keeping us out of your wedding. So. Not my story. But my best friend I will call JJ. And happened about 2 years ago. I have his permission to post it. JJ came out to his family when he was about 27 years old. Aside from them, everyone else in his life knew he was gay. And there was a good reason for it. As he expected. His parents reacted horribly to the news. And basically disowned him at the moment. They later told both extended families and his uncles and grandparents cut him off too. His maternal grandmother went as far as to try to take him out of his dead maternal grandfather's will. She failed. Due to the will's conditions, no one could modify it. Not even the main representative aka grandma. And homo-intimacy was not listed in the conditions that could make the inheritance void, or grandpa didn't expect it to happen or he just did not care. Take your guess. JJ was legally the partial owner of some properties and also got a substantial amount of money, which got even bigger when he reclaimed in cash his corresponding share of the houses, which forced his family to buy them from him. The other option was losing the properties in a public sale. As stated by our country's laws, JJ didn't need the money actually. By this point he was a moderately successful professional and lived in his own apartment. But it severed any legal binding he had with his family that could become a problem in the future. He still kept good relationships with his sister and most of his cousins. But even if they invited him to family gatherings, he always declined. Fast forward 3 years and JJ is getting married to his longtime boyfriend Sky, whose family was the polar opposite of JJ's. When they found out, they made royal wedding style plans for the guy's elopement. They were, are very wealthy. And JJ contributed to the whole extravaganza with a portion of his inheritance. He invited as his guests his friends, including here yours truly as his best man, some coworkers, his sister, and the cousins he still spoke to. Don't be wrong. It was a lot of people. The wedding was amazing. Done in an underground, literally speaking. It was a freaking cave venue. His sister took him to the altar. There was an orchestra playing, etc. Fairy tale style. And the after party, I can't remember half of it because I was so drunk. But it was from another world. They said go big or go home. And they really went big. But enough of the context. You came here for the juicy part. JJ told the good cousins not to tell anything to his parents or other family members about the wedding. Because he didn't want trouble. But obviously the next day their social media accounts were full of pictures and word spread out like fire. At first it was small things. He started receiving calls of some aunts about why they weren't invited. The bad cousins complained via Facebook. And other nuisances. He just ignored them and blocked numbers and accounts. He did not want or need to give explanations when they had all made clear their position years prior. But one day, hell came directly to the door. His parents, P and M, his maternal grandma, MG, and his paternal grandparents, PGS, all the heads of the families, came to visit. How they found where he lived is still a mystery to him. Sky was working and JJ was alone in the house, so there was no one to help him against the crook squad. His name. Not mine, ha ha ha. I can't actually transcript because he didn't use exact words when he told me this. But it seems at first they tried to be gentle, asking how he could leave them out of such an important event that directly affected the family. Dudes. Really? And things like that. His mom even used the "you took away my chance of seeing my only male son marriage" argument. He pointed out that they were the ones that expelled him from the family and that they hated everything gay. Half of that wedding was LGBT crowd, if you are wondering. They classified his exile as a misunderstanding. The bickering between the six continued for a long time until he got tired and asked what they wanted. As he could not redo the wedding. MG spilled the beans, ungrateful brat. At least compensate us for not inviting us to a wedding we paid for. That was the problem. MG and his parents were mad he had used the family money on the ceremony. He told me they actually thought he paid for everything and had burnt out all the inheritance, when it was more a 30 to 40% of the deal. Sky's family paid more and JJ still had inheritance money, and they wanted it back. They had brought the PGS with them as an additional emotional leverage. As I told you earlier, JJ had made sure that money had no legal bindings to his family anymore. But for some reason they still believed it was theirs to a point and were mad he had spent it. He confronted them, and they threw away their facade. What came next was a serious fight in which both JJ and his father ended hitting each other until the neighbors called the police. Charges were pressed on both sides, but in the end the case was declared a tie. Don't ask me how that was possible because I don't know, and JJ was not forced to pay 1 cent. He was also able to ask for restraining orders against all of them. Till this day JJ is still shaken about the event. He had prepared himself for years knowing that his family would hate him because of his intimacy. But he still retained some hope that far in the future they could mend things up. He lost that hope after they tried to emotionally scam him. Thanks for reading TL. Doctor. My friend's family cut him of their lives and were mad he had used a share of his inheritance in his wedding without inviting them to it. They wanted him to give the money back and his dad punched him after he refused. Edit. Wow, this totally blew up as I had not expected. Don't worry. I am going to show JJ all your kind comments. He will like them. He and Sky are super happy right now, well, apart from Corona, but he sometimes remembers his parents and gets to Monday blues. He will also probably get jealous I got my first platinum thanks to his life story he. By the way, thank you kind strangers very much for the prices, and yeah. I now. Weeding. Truth be told I am secretly a hardcore stonner. Kidding. This always happens with the title as is the only part one don't run through word. Sorry about it. Comment by Overcomefoil 959. Comment by Potatois Illuminati. You can get married in caves? Comment by Child of the Moon. Unbelievable. Glad your friend was able to cut ties and got a restraining order on them. They sound like homophobic macadamias. Our next story is from Brightside 256. My entitled mother-in-law to be threw my family heirloom engagement ring down a storm drain. Some people were telling me to post this story on here as well, so here you go. I have seen a lot of crazy people in my life, but my potential mother-in-law is the absolute worst person I have ever met. I, 30 female, have been with my boyfriend, 31 male, for 8 months now. For the first few months everything was amazing. He is the sweetest and most caring man I have ever been with. He likes to surprise me with fun dates and flowers for no apparent reason. The biggest surprise of all though was when I met his mother. I met his parents for the first time a few months ago. The first thing mother-in-law said to me when I walked in the door was, "Are you Jewish?" Quote, I am not, and I am not particularly religious. But I was raised Catholic. Once I told her this, it was the beginning of the madness. She immediately stopped talking to me and acted as if I didn't exist. I was extremely nervous about meeting my boyfriend's parents. So this broke my heart. I was determined to make a good impression. So I kept trying to connect with her. This was a huge mistake and I should have just let it go. Once we were all seated for dinner, she finally decided to try and make conversation. I have naturally red hair and she asked me if my parents have the same color. I told that I have the same hair as my mother. She then had the audacity to ask me, "Does the carpet match the drapes?" Quote, I had no idea how to respond and just sat there stunned. Seeing my reaction, she said, "Don't worry, I will just ask my son about it later." I looked over at my boyfriend who seemed equally as shocked. But he didn't say anything. She then started to go on about my hair being too curly. She told me that I really need to learn how to run a brush through my hair and think about my appearance more when I am out with her son. Then when I didn't eat much at dinner, she gave me her version of a compliment. I was told it was good that I am watching what I eat because it would be a shame if I got any bigger. This was just my first meeting with this woman. As soon as I got into my car I burst into tears until I got home. My boyfriend was texting me and apologizing for his mother's behavior. But the damage was done. And I told him I needed time to think. He went into apology overload after this and started sending flowers to my office every day and leaving me messages begging me to talk to him. I finally agreed and we went out to dinner. He told me he spoke with his mother about her inappropriate comments and he swore it would never happen again. With this reassurance, I decided to give it another chance. Fast forward 2 weeks to when he invited me to come to a family birthday party. This time I would also be meeting his sisters and grandparents. His grandparents and sisters are awesome people. They asked me normal questions about my job, family and friends. His mother seemed to be avoiding me throughout the evening, and honestly, I was okay with that. I went to grab something from my purse and noticed that it was not where I left it. I looked everywhere but I could not find it. I went and asked my boyfriend and he began to help me look. He then got a strange look on his face and he quickly went upstairs. I could then hear a lot of yelling begin upstairs. He came back down holding my purse after a few minutes and told me that we were leaving. Once we got in the car, I asked him what was going on. His mother had taken my purse so that she could see my driver's license. She intended to try and run a background check on me. He told me she had told him this earlier but honestly had thought she was joking. I thought that it was best if I avoided any of his family functions for the time being. This worked out great for a while and he went to any of his family parties alone. He would ask me each time before leaving if I was sure that I didn't want to go, but I always declined. Last week his family had their family reunion and he asked me to please come with him. I was very reluctant, but considering there would be so many people present, I didn't think she would pull anything. When we got there, everything was going great. I met his extended family and got to catch up with his sisters. His mother did seem to be shooting me death glares all night, but I brushed it off. Soon she came over and joined a table I was seated at with his sisters and some cousins. The conversation was pleasant as we were talking about his sister's children. His sister has a daughter who is 12 and is the same age as my niece. I then showed his sister a picture of my niece on my phone. His mother took a look at the screen and began to laugh. She told me she hopes that if me and her son ever have children that they don't look like my niece. My niece is beautiful, by the way, and she is only 12 years old. What kind of monster attacks a 12-year-old child's appearance? This was my breaking point and I went off like a volcano. I started to scream at her and told her she is the most evil person I have ever had to disadvantage to meet. I told her as I ever did have children with her son, she can be certain she will never meet them because hell is too far to travel to. I am not 100% certain exactly everything that I said, but from what his younger sister later said, it was epic. She began to play the victim and wailed that I had just misunderstood her joke. My boyfriend came rushing over at this point and she threw herself into his arms, telling him I am a horrible woman and he needed to throw me out right now. He told her that wasn't going to happen and to stop making a fool of herself. She seemed to accept this for a moment and sat back down. She just kept sobbing that I just didn't understand how to take a joke. Then something in her snapped as she noticed something that my boyfriend was holding in his hand and began to have another meltdown. I didn't understand what was happening at this point and just stood there watching a grown woman pitch a fit like a toddler. None of what she was saying made any sense to me as it was mostly just incoherent screaming. But I did pick up on many derogatory comments directed my way. My boyfriend then told me we were leaving and told me to grab my things. As I started to get ready, mother-in-law made a lunge for my boyfriend's hand and grabbed the small box he was holding. She then looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You will never have this ring, you little BH." She ran outside and threw the box down a storm drain. Turns out that my boyfriend was intending on proposing to me. He had just obtained his grandmother's ring while we were at the reunion. His grandmother is completely heartbroken because now her ring is down a storm drain instead of continuing on in the family as she had always wanted. I don't know where to go from here. I am devastated, confused and exhausted. Can I ask him to never see his mother again? Is that my place to say something like that? I am sorry that my story is so long, but I really needed get this rant off my chest. Comment by a deleted user. You need to sit down with your boyfriend and explain that you're not going to tolerate that kind of nonsense. Y'all need to decide together how to handle her. Starting with you having no contact with her, and him not sharing an ounce of information about you with her. Then you need to figure out how to survive the wedding, children, etc. Comment by Kitty Tigress. Whoa, flushed, what the hell? She went as far as to throw the grandmother's ring down a storm drain? I'm surprised grandma didn't slap her and make her look for it. Comment by Alex716. I hope that grandma disowns her. There is no way I would stand for that if I was in her shoes. Our next story is from Wrath of Cain. Entitled Mom Broke My $55,000 Wheelchair. Dear entitled mother. Thank you so very much for your complete and utter lack of patience when getting on the bus, which resulted in breaking part of my 55,000 wheelchair and me needing to call the police for help. So I was on the bus tonight heading to a workshop that I was fairly excited for. Things were great until slightly before my stop when two adults got on. One with a toddler and the other wheeling a stroller. It is strict corporate policy that all strollers must be folded before being brought onto the bus. But not enough drivers actually enforce it. And this was one of those monster Cadillac strollers to boot. Entitled Mom borrowed her unfolded stroller on the bus and, seeing the front entirely occupied by disabled people, including myself, decided to push past toward the back. Only, her behemoth of a stroller wouldn't fit in the space available and she started ramming it along my wheelchair to plow it through. Me. Hey, watch it. Entitled Mom keeps trying to squeeze through me. Careful. I can feel you tugging at stuff. Entitled Mom doesn't stop. Finally she managed to push through and moved back. I fumed for the next few blocks. Pushed the button for my stop. Turned on my wheelchair. And got up. Left brake disconnected. Error. I tried again. Repeated errors. Me. Duck KK. The next several minutes were spent with the bus pulled over. Passengers getting mad at me for causing a delay. While I panicked trying to figure out how to get off the bus. Finally a guy flipped my electric/freewheel release switch on and off several times, and that managed to convince my chair to work for me to get off my bus and get about 15 feet away before my chair suddenly turned itself off. I turned it back on. It started throwing up a charger inhibit error, which basically is the error you get when you try to start moving when you're still plugged into the wall outlet. The next hour was a progression of events that saw me sitting on the ground with the back of my chair opened up as I went through everything trying to figure out what the ever-loving duck was going on. I even called the police because I wasn't sure how I'd be able to get home. My wheelchair repair company doesn't have after-hours service. In the end I discovered that two different things had gotten disconnected, and when I fixed them my chair started up just fine. The lovely officer helped me get the cover back on my chair and, more importantly, helped me get safely back into my chair. I said duck it. Skipped the workshop. Went home. Showered the icky sidewalk off of me. And had a couple of beers. None of this would have happened if that entitled mother had just taken one goddamn second to fold her stroller up. Or, I dunno, stopped when I repeatedly asked her to. But no. She was far too important to do such basic shit like that. And yes, my wheelchair is actually 55,000. I know that sounds like a lot. But given that according to order form I just looked at the joystick cover alone as 85, it doesn't surprise me at all. It has 3 different tilt/adjustment settings that drives the cost up enormously. I love shouting at people who drive too close to me that my wheelchair costs more than their car. Comment by GingerBoy13. Comment by Busted Crust Bucket. Wow. I didn't know people could be so stupid and impatient. Did you get the police do any investigation to find the M? Plus, why was everyone not stopping the M? It honestly hurt me to know some people care for themselves. Comment by Always Sleepy 1945. Take this story to the transit authority and give them hell. I totally understand not enforcing the fold-up rule if the disabled spots are unoccupied and it's otherwise not causing an issue. But if they're occupied or someone disabled comes on, you gotta fold it up. Period. And the driver should have been attentive enough to see this happen and step in. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this video, smash the like button, and subscribe to our Devil. See you in the next one.